What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my Hellraiser review series. I know there's some gaps in between these films that I watch and these review series that I do. However, I have so many films to review, first time watches to, you know, deep dives into other films that I've seen many times, as well as enjoying the heat. So, time is there, but time is also limited at the same time. However, of course, I am going to be finishing the Hellraiser review series, obviously, and we are at number 8. I plan on doing the remake too, but I have to find where I can stream that one because apparently it hasn't been released on physical media anywhere that I know of. And I don't have, I forget what streaming service it was on, but I am not subscribed to it, so we'll see how I can get to it. However, Hellraiser Hellworld, this is another Rick Bota film. He did 3 of these, and this is his final one. And this came out in 2005, which is the same year that Deader came out. And after viewing this one again, I can say that Deader so far is my least favorite. A lot of people trash this film a lot, but I think it is a lot of fun. It is a very stupid film, of course, no doubt about that. But it is the kind of dumb fun you can have fun with, just like a really awesomely cheesy B movie kind of thing. And yeah, it's just a good time. I really like the vibe of it. I like the gothic feel of it. It opens up straight up that era of like goth lore. Like you got like the religious symbolism, the dark atmospheres, rainy, cloudy atmospheres, again reminiscent of like the Crow kind of thing. It goes back to kind of like a Hellraiser 3-ish feel, although it's not nearly as good or impactful as the third film was. It still has that vibe to it, that look to it. It makes you kind of feel cold in a sense. And then it's got the fantastic party atmosphere once the film gets going with the whole mansion Hellworld party that they go to. But basically, what we have going on here is the film opens up at a funeral because this group of friends had a one of their friends pass away named Adam, and Adam was really obsessed with this video game called Hellworld. They don't talk too much about the video game. They kind of just introduce it and throw it in there. But it's a video game that's basically wraps around the whole like Cinnabite and Hellworld lore. So I guess in this universe, the Pinhead and everything was known to be fiction or known to be made up. So there, it's kind of like pop culture in a sense. I think. But this video game is very popular. All the kids played it, but Adam specifically, who passed away, got obsessed with it, and I think he committed suicide, if I'm not mistaken. And then they get this invitation, all the remaining friends, to this Hellworld party, and it's being hosted at this mansion. Lance Hendrickson pops in this film, and it's always nice to see him. He actually, in this film specifically, but I can tell in other films too, and I'm bringing this up because his voice sounds a lot like James Remar, and James Remar was in the 5th film. But when he speaks, he's almost playing that James Remar-esque character that James Remar played in the 5th film, and there's a lot of similarities like with the two. Now, that's probably fully coincidence. I'm sure they didn't cast Lance Henriksen and be like, hey, remember James Remar from the 5th movie? Act like him, because he's playing a totally different character, and they're completely unrelated. But he has that presence to him. He has that deep, like dark, sinister kind of James Remar voice kind of thing, and he does a really good job. He's very menacing, and they come to this party and super of the time. I mean, the music, the culture, the way everybody's dressed. It very like very 2000s, almost 90s feel kind of thing, and strange things happen. These kids start getting picked off one by one. A lot of the kills in this film, at least one of them specifically, is very Saw-esque. And obviously this came out a year after the first Saw film, and I think it's the same year as Saw 2. So that was obviously a nod to Saw and inspired by Saw because of the era of the film. And yeah, these kids start dying off, and the film just keeps throwing in a lot of Hellworld mystery, and it turns kind of into a mystery-esque film until we get the reveal at the end, which is why most people despise this film, and I don't like the ending either. But as throwaway as it is, I mean, nobody likes the "it was just a dream" ending because it's really ridiculous. But it's a forgivable ending just because of like the visuals and the style of the film. It's a style over substance, in my opinion, and just the stuff that happens on the way there. At least it's entertaining enough to forgive a really mediocre, hacked on ending that nobody gives a shit about. But at that point, you're like, I've seen worse films, kind of thing. Like this is better than Deader by a mile, I think. And it steers away from the themes of 5 and 6 because they were more like detective seedy kind of Seven feeling films. This one is more like 2000s cheap direct to DVD, like kind of like remakes that were coming out that day and age, like The Fog and stuff like that, even though, they're wildly different films, but they had that visual style to them, is what I'm getting at. It's cool to see, what's his name, Henry Cavill in here too. Superman, of course, in a very early role. He plays a strong douchebag in this movie, and I haven't seen him in too many films. I've really only seen him in Superman and the Mission Impossible film, and this one. So I don't know how wide his acting range is, but in this one he's very different than the typical Henry Cavill that we know today. I mean, there's this one scene where he's getting head from this woman and he's talking to his girlfriend at the same time on the phone, and just what he's saying is just so like forced and stereotypical, and like just the kind of dialogue that is there to make you know that this guy's a piece of shit and just wait for him to die, kind of thing. And I really loved his death specifically too, when basically he gets like impaled by a hook in a kitchen, and the Cenobite that they use in there he's basically just this like pinhead looking Cenobite, except without the pins on his head and like tape around his eyes. Very Silent Hill, and I like that about that Cenobite specifically. Although the Cenobites don't look as effective, and they're not as menacing, I guess, in this film. Also, after the end, you realize that they weren't even there in the first place, and they were just hallucinated, which adds even more to the stupidity. The fact that you have a pinhead, like, you have a series, I should say, that the main antagonist is Pinhead, and he's the huge villain. It's like, having a Friday movie or a Halloween movie where Michael Myers was hallucinated by the end, and everybody was just dreaming about Michael Myers and he wasn't actually there through the whole film, or Jason. Kind of that shit, you know what I mean? It's like, why even do it? Why even have that reveal where Pinhead was never there in the first place? But anyways, there's that, and then there's the fact that the Cenobites are kind of just cheaped out. There's even this one scene where after everybody's kind of picked off, they come back as Cenobites, and you got Henry Cavill as a Cenobite, and the girl Allison, who dies in a really cool saw-looking trap where her face gets like sawed, no pun intended. I mean, it's a pretty blatant Saw ripoff in that one with the whole headpiece and everything, but not really a headpiece, but it's coming at her. But you watch it and you know exactly, okay, they're copying Saw. But these characters come back as Cenobites, and they're cheap. Like, they look horrible. They're so unmemorable and pointless that it's just like, why? But yeah, back to that Cenobite that actually killed Henry Cavill. He looks cool with the tape around his head, and I love the Silent Hill video games and always have, and that's what it automatically reminded me of. I also love the scene where Chelsea is having a phone call with Lance Hendrick's character, and total Scream vibe that I got from it, the movie Scream from '96, because she starts talking about the lore of Hellraiser and what's supposed to happen. Like, I'm supposed to open the puzzle box, and then the Cenobites come. They don't come before the puzzle box open, and I know nobody opened the box. And she's going on about lore, and she's having this whole argument with Lance Hendricks about lore of the Hellraiser universe, and I'm like, nice. Nice job adding some Scream vibes in there as well as the Saw vibes, so that was funny. I get Lance Henriksen's character's reasonings to bury these kids alive under the ground and give them a drug that will make them hallucinate as like punishment. I mean, that'd be severe torture, and like when you can torture somebody mentally and physically, the idea of it is brutal. But for a Hellraiser film, it's kind of like, why would you have the plot reveal a dream sequence and then you have two tacked on, like they feel like post credit endings, but it's just two after, like one after the other, and after the two survivors, a girl and a guy, I forget. There's Jake, and then there's Chelsea who survive. And then they go off and do their thing, and then it goes to Lance Hendrickson in a motel, and then he's has the puzzle box, which God knows how he got across it. And he starts playing with it and he opens up, and then the real Pinhead finally shows up at the very end of the movie. You're like, why? You didn't have Pinhead and you made him a dream through the whole thing just to introduce him like an hour and 20 minutes into the movie for two, like, why? Now here's real Pinhead with the real Cenobites, and then, takes the revenge on the Lance Hendrickson character, and there's blood all over the motel. The cops come into the motel, and then they have the Chelsea and Jake also driving off, and they hallucinate Lance Hendrickson in their back seat, and then they swerve, and then it kind of cuts back to the motel part and them swerving part, and then the motel part and them swerving part, and they just end the film that way with a song playing, like "Look Who's Laughing Now" or something. It sounds like this 2000s rock song, and the lyrics are like "Look Who's Laughing Now." So Lance Hendrickson got what was coming for him for putting on this whole spectacle with messing with these kids and burying them alive. The scene was cool where her hallucinated self imagines herself calling the cops from a window while the cop is looking up at her and seeing nobody there. So she's hallucinating, and she's actually calling the cops from the coffin that she's in underground. So you kind of start adding the pieces together, but Lance Hendrickson giving them the phone for the purpose of calling them and being able to mess with their heads is also kind of a bad idea, because he's giving them a phone so they can call for help. I know they're hallucinating like crazy, but it never comes into the plot, and other than Chelsea, nobody does call for help. But it was still pretty interesting to think about the fact that they were given an opportunity to call for help if they could. So it is what it is. Like I said, this film is fun to be had, and the story, it's ridiculous and stupid, but it really doesn't matter, because to me, I could still throw this film on for mindless fun and have a really good time with it, because it doesn't take itself as seriously as the other Hellraiser films do, and that kind of gives it points up, in my opinion, because for like a throwback 2000s cheap horror film, it's fun, and it's great to look at, and the kills are pretty cool. Not super memorable, but they're cool enough, and it holds nostalgia. This one will age probably better than the other Hellraiser films, and they're not as repetitive. Or this one, sorry, is not as repetitive as the other Hellraiser films were, especially like one after the other. So yeah, that's Hellraiser overall. It wasn't super bad, and super bad, and yeah, it was fine. It was a better Hellraiser film than a lot of them are. So I gave it a 2.5, just like I gave 5 and 6 a 2.5, and then Deader I gave 2, and so far, like I said, that's the worst. But I remember Revelations, which is next, being the absolute worst. So we'll see if that merits any points when I get to it or not. Time will tell. Subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you like to listen to my voice, or if you like my film reviews. I will be back with more soon, so stay tuned for those. Check out what's on the channel already. Stay tuned for what's coming. Until next review, have a good one. Take care and cheers.